Statistically, an airplane is considered the safest mode of transportation. Nevertheless, ambiguous and unexplained accidents often happen to airplanes. One accident in particular stands out from the others. In this episode, I'll tell you about a plane that landed with 92 skeletons on board. On September 4, 1954, Santiago Airlines Flight 513 departed Aachen, Germany for Porto Alegre, Brazil. There were 88 passengers and 4 crew members on board. The flight should have lasted 18 hours. Instead, the flight lasted as long as 35 years. Flight 513 did not arrive at Porto Alegre, where it made a successful landing, until October 12, 1989. The pilots didn't even contact the air traffic controllers. Of course, the plane could have had a radio failure. That might have been the response the air traffic controllers were expecting. Completely baffled, airport services sent people to find out what kind of plane it was and why they were refusing to make contact. The first thing that caught their eye was the Santiago Airlines logo. However, the company had ceased operations in 1956. The situation was heating up. When security forces finally gained access to the plane, the reason why no one was making contact became clear. The first responders saw a shocking sight. All the passengers were sitting in their seats with their seatbelts fastened, but all that was left of them were skeletons. Hoping to get some explanation, the first responders went to the cockpit, but a similar picture awaited them there too. The captain's skeleton was still holding the steering wheel, and the turboprop engines were idling. As soon as this terrible incident became known outside the airport, all kinds of theories and assumptions began to emerge. Among them was the rather obvious hoax theory. At least one researcher in the field of paranormal phenomenon stated that the only possible explanation that corresponded to all the described details could only be that the plane was caught in a time loop. However, he couldn't explain why then all those who were on board became skeletons. For that matter, how was the skeleton captain even able to land the plane? Authorities launched an investigation into the circumstances of the flight, but categorically refused to draw any conclusions or divulge details. Aviation officials have only confirmed that the plane appeared out of thin air and landed safely. The veil of secrecy has angered experts who have urged the Brazilian government to allow civilian experts to participate in the investigation. In their view, it's a crime to keep such information secret. What do you think of this story? Could it really happen, or is it a common but interesting legend? Share your thoughts in the comments. And stay tuned, because very soon I'll tell you about the most mysterious incidents and cases in the history of aviation. There are many legends in the world about mysterious places where planes disappear, and the most famous of them, of course, is the Bermuda Triangle. There's a reason why this region in the North Atlantic has become so famous. Let's move back 77 years. On December 5, 1945, 5 Avenger torpedo bombers flew from the U.S. Navy base at Fort Lauderdale toward the Bahamas. The planes were safe and the 14 crew members were experienced pilots. Even though they seemed to veer slightly off course, they had everything under control until the 5 planes simply disappeared. The rescue plane that was sent to the place where Flight 19 allegedly disappeared also disappeared with the entire crew. Soon, one of the largest operations in the search for disappeared planes began. 5 Avengers were searched by 300 planes and 21 ships. The search operations ceased completely after several weeks. The crew was then declared missing. The U.S. Navy investigation found human error to be the culprit. Flight 19 instructor Lieutenant Commander Charles Taylor relied on what he saw out the window, or more simply, on his intuition rather than on the aircraft's instrument readings. But what about the fact that from the time Flight 19 went missing until the mid-1980s, more than 20 small planes disappeared when passing through the Bermuda Triangle? No one else saw them. Not even wreckage could be found. So what happened to the Avengers 77 years ago? November 24, 1971. Flight 305 is preparing to depart from Portland Airport, Oregon. Among the passengers is a man who's about 45 years old. He's no different from the others. He's dressed in a dark suit with a tie and a hat and is holding a coat and briefcase. His seat is 18C in the back of the plane. At 2:50 p.m. local time, the plane leaves the Portland airport. 8 minutes later, the passenger in seat 18C passes a note to one of the flight attendants. It contains an entirely unpleasant message. The man has a bomb in his briefcase. He opens it to show that this is not a joke at all. Moreover, the note outlines the demands: $200,000, 4 parachutes, and refueling of the plane in Seattle in order to continue the flight. The pilot, who is already aware of the situation, immediately contacts the airport. An operation is initiated to meet all the hijackers' demands. Upon arrival, Dan Cooper orders to pull the plane back to a brightly lit platform and close all curtains in the cabin so that snipers can't follow him. The plane stands at a gas station, and airport workers hand the hijacker money and parachutes. At 7:40 p.m., the plane takes off again with only the criminal and 5 crew members on board now. The new direction of travel is Mexico, with refueling in Reno. The new requirement is to fly the plane at a very low altitude, no higher than 3,000 meters. At 22:15, the plane lands in Reno. The police start searching the cabin, but Dan Cooper is nowhere to be found. According to the investigation, Cooper jumped out of the plane with a parachute at around 8 p.m. But even the fighter pilots who followed the plane didn't see him. No one ever saw Dan Cooper again. It had been half a century since such a daring crime had taken place. It begs the question, what's the status of the investigation in this case? The only hard facts are the exact date of the crime and the crime itself. Dan Cooper seems to have vanished into thin air on that November day. In February 1980, however, something interesting turned up. An 8-year-old boy found 3 stacks of $20 bills on the banks of the Columbia River. The serial numbers of the money matched the ones Cooper had received. Experts determined that the bills may well have been lying in the sand and water since 1971. The American Amelia Earhart was one of the most famous women of her time. She was the first woman pilot to fly over the Atlantic Ocean. In addition, Amelia was elected the first president of the Organization of Women Pilots, called the 99s. She had a lot of accomplishments, but she wanted to set even more records. Her goal was to fly around the globe, but this task she was not destined to complete. It was while she and her navigator, Fred Noonan, were setting their potential record that she disappeared. On the 1st of June 1937, they left Miami and reached Lai in New Guinea by the end of the month. Amelia and Fred were last seen there. They'd traveled most of the distance. Another 11,000 kilometers awaited them over the Pacific Ocean. In the middle of that stretch, the plan was to stop for refueling on Howland Island. However, Earhart and Noonan never reached it. There have been suggestions that they fell into the ocean, or that they actually landed on another island where they lived out the rest of their lives. There have been theories that Amelia and Fred's Lockheed Model 10E Electra landed on an island in the Pacific where there was a secret Japanese military base, and the American pilots were taken prisoner. Despite various speculations and the remains found on the desert island, the mystery of the disappearance of the brave pilot and her navigator is still unsolved. Varig Flight 967. On January 30th, 1979, a Varig Boeing 707 was performing a cargo flight 967 on the Tokyo-Los Angeles-Rio de Janeiro route. However, only 30 minutes after takeoff, the plane disappeared over the Pacific Ocean. Of course, a search for the Boeing was immediately launched, but absolutely no trace of the plane could ever be found. And then they began to voice curious theories. On board was an expensive cargo: 153 paintings of Manabu Mabe, a painter of Japanese-Brazilian origin. Their total value was $1.2 million. Is it possible that all this is related to the paintings? Or was it all about the malfunction that destroyed the plane, along with the crew and valuable cargo? Thanks, guys! What do you think happened to this flight? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you later.